It was really built in three different segments. There were 3 units and then 2 and 2 for 7 total buildings. But they each had their own plat or plat addition, I guess, when they were built. Okay.
Well, for my part, I think it's a little bit of overkill to require unanimous consent by every resident. Now, in this case, it's not about somebody adding on. They're changing the footprints of a couple of spots on the plans, and I just don't. Everything they're going to do is still within the theme of what they're doing out there. I just don't see the need for it.
I have to agree. Exactly.
My only concern with it is the fact that to me, for your development, it's a positive and a property enhancer for having the detached homes. But what does that do to the value of the people who now have the homes that are attached? Does that do anything to affect the property value down the road of their property value? If I've got a detached home for sale, at the same time someone has one of the attached homes, if I'm the person looking, I would be more inclined to want a detached home. So I can see where it might affect the property value.
You know, you can, some of y'all know I used to be a lawyer. I try not to let that out. And I was a tax lawyer, which is even worse.
Oh, man, you're recovering.
So, yeah, I'm trying to withdraw. So basically, you give me any kind of statute, and I can figure out a way around it. That's what I did for 15 years. So, but I think, this is my thought process, if you have a detached home, they cost more than our attached homes to start with. So one of the things in selling your home is you want some price differentials between homes. So I can't afford that one, so I've got to go to this one. You know, the flip side is that so I can go stand on the other side is, okay, I'm competing. I've got one more house just like mine that's attached to compete with. So, you know, one, a half dozen of the other. And what we're talking about here is I gave Ruth a little flyer, and this is sort of, you know, we've made a rule to address one problem, and it's sort of sloshed over. That's a good legal term, sloshed over, and it impacted. Yeah, it's. I practiced in Atlanta, so they taught me some words down there, the question is, you got this big development out there, and you got to sort of look into the future and decide exactly what you think is going to go every place you've got one. And what we did is we platted half of our development, and that's just a little site plan, and we put a little disclaimer on there that we can change things and this, that, and the other. But it's kind of hard to see way in the future what people are going to buy and what's going to sell, and it's really hard to plan. Now, Ruth had some very good ideas about how to set up the envelopes, and that's helped us a whole lot, because we've got about, seven different detached plans right now that'll fit in that box, and we're about to hopefully get an 8th one approved in the next little bit, and they all fit in that nice little box. So that works for the detached, but part of what sort of brought this to the front was when we were going back and look at the preliminary plat, you know, the concept design, we found that a lot of folks want detached houses, more than we thought. And so we're going over in that second section that we have and change the site plan to include, I think, 14 detached homes instead of 14 attached homes, and that worked just fine. And then we looked over into our main section to see that we're working on now, to see if there was any place to put detached homes over there, and they would, quote, technically fit in that box, but the ordinance require that they be a certain feet apart, so they're, if you put them close together, they fit in the box. If you do the other ordinance, they don't. And so it's just, are you gonna have some flexibility to put attached, detached, fourplexes, duplexes? I mean, we could be in here saying, all right, we got 2 quads that we've put on the map here. We really want to put 2 duplexes and 2 detached houses. So, you know, where at some point you got to have some flexibility, or what we'll do is, or developers will do, is they will plat 2 houses and sell those 2, and plat 4 houses and sell those, and plat, I mean, that's one way to deal with the ordinance, is you just don't go out and make a master plan and do a master plat. You just plat every time you sell 2, 3, 4 houses. I mean, we actually do that. You know, it's funny. You can't sell a condominium loan anymore. Banks can't sell them. You know, because Freddie Mae, Fannie Mae, all those Mays, they won't buy them anymore because, you know, banks don't hold their loans. So they said in condominium complexes, in order for them to buy a loan, you got to have 70% of your home sold, and you got to have all of your amenities. So what happens is lawyers just went around and they took the established sections and added 3 more homes. So if you had 50 homes, you had 53, so you still had 70% if you had 50 homes sold. And then they had 4 more and 3 more and 4 more. So you still got the undeveloped land. And so there's a way to get around all of these things, and you shouldn't have to play games with ordinances. You know, you gotta, and it's really hard to get a one-size-fits-all. But the thing you got backing up these changes is you can't make those changes till your planning commission approves them. So it's not like you can build an Eiffel Tower. It's not like you can divide, you know, if you've got 2-acre lots, the planning commission is not going to approve, you know, dividing up into half-acre lots. I mean, it's just not the concept. So you've got a backstop. And if you put some kind of notice ordinance in, you know, where the developer or whoever has to give, you know, written notice to everybody there, you can have people come, and we've got 2 residents here now. So it's just a thinking about the problem. There's a few things in your, you know, in your subdivision ordinances that are a little old, and, you know, need to be looked at. And you know, this is one of them, I think, of how do you deal with large developments that are multi-unit developments. It's a little different, I think, if you've got, you know, single lots where you're actually going out and selling lots and people are building on them. I think you have to be a little stricter, and maybe the planning commission will, you know, that's their prerogative. But where the buildings almost all look alike, and you're just going from 4s to 2s to 1s to 2s, I mean, there ought to be some flexibility, because all you have to get, at least in you know, if you get somebody that's just in Florida, you can't ever find them. You know, they own the house, or you get one guy that's mad at you, or 3 guys that want some of Mark's trees. I was going to tell you, if you want to do an arboretum in our boulevard, we'll be glad to let you test those there, because we're getting ready to do another section, and that'd be a wonderful addition to our landscaping. If you'd like to test over there, you're very welcome to.
Need an underground
A
arboretum,
free
right?
place to plant trees.
I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind when we're talking about this is we're not talking about just this one development. We're talking about anything that may come up or has already here, and but especially the things that are going to come up in the future at other places as well. As we're not just dealing here with making a decision that affects just you, and that's why we want to get as much information as we can.
And the one thing you have is the build, you know, anything you'd want to do, you obviously wouldn't leave it unilaterally to the developer or unilaterally to a single homeowner or anything like that, because, you know, your current provision really is aimed at things like porches and extensions and this and that, and that's really not what we're talking about. So it's kind of hard to, I don't know whether it's intentional or accidentally, sort of, like I said, sloshed over. But you've you know, you got to have some flexibility when you're putting plans together, because I don't know what house, somebody wants to buy. So we just, I think you got to look at some kind of flexibility. Also, if you leave it the way it is, when we do our due diligence, you go in and you read statutes and you read ordinances. And this provision, you can't find it till you come talk to Ruth. I mean, she tells you about it, but you can't find it, or at least I couldn't find it. So if you're going to have this kind of, what I think is very restrictive provision, put it in an ordinance someplace. Put it in your rules so that people know you have to do it. Because we didn't find out about it until after we'd bought the property, we got the plat, and it was the last thing that was, when you get the letter that says here are the things you have to do, that's the first time we heard about it. Maybe because we didn't do our due diligence and come and sit down with Ruth, but that kind of very restrictive, very heavy restriction on private property ought to be in writing somewhere that somebody with due diligence can find. So if you're going to leave it the way it is, I'd recommend that you put it in your ordinance and put it in your policy so you can actually see it when you come visit. I mean, when you're trying to figure it out. Because like I said, as a tax lawyer, I just want to know what the rules are. Then I'll figure out what, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm serious. I mean, when you were a young lawyer in the law firm there, you'd see one of these old gray guys like me. They'd come in and they'd toss this to you and say, Congress passed this last week. Figure out how to get around it. And don't come out until you do. So, but if that kind of provision ought to be in writing where you can find it, by looking at the statute. So that'd be one recommendation I'd make. And if you do this, I would, if you look, we've got a little disclaimer flyer, little thing there. I'd make people put it on their communications with buyers that say, this can be changed according to Farragut ordinance, so they have notice. And then if you want to make a change, I would say whoever is doing the development has to go out and tell people that there is going to be a hearing and it's about this topic, please come. So I'd put some requirements on the owner or the person promoting the change, and if you leave it the way it is, I would codify it and put it in your reg so people know it's there. So.
Background
I agree
information.
with Ken 100% with regard to being in. It's the same problem with our residential lighting standards, and that was twice made sure it was kept out, and that has always been kind of a problem with that. In this particular case, with regards to, he made the comment about requiring developers to put it on their sales stuff. We have no authority over that, and that is why information is on the plat, because oftentimes the plat is attached as part of sales brochures and things like that, or as people are looking at it, they actually see the plat. The only thing we have control over is that's my only say with regards to that is, although I agree with Ken, we just don't have the authority over it.
I'm not so sure you do. As long you're a separate entity that can do anything that's not preempted by the state of Tennessee or preempted by the federal government.
How would we would not be able to enforce it.
That's another question.
Well, is there any circumstance in which they would come in with some change, either on a person's back porch or with a new design of the subdivision for what's left? Is there any circumstance in which they would not have to come to this board?